in an era when everything is changing and it's so hard to find thorough coverage of the news, especially here locally.
And also why they hate us so much.
In an era when
I think it's true.
And it's so hard to find.
Yeah. I mean,
news,
I
especially here
think,
locally.
I think a lot of it is self-inflicted, I mean, and I think that we've done such a bad job for so many years of explaining, like, what we do and how we do it and why we do it. And so it's not like this horrible vacuum. And so, there are individuals who come along, and I don't think just one individual who we're all thinking about. I think this started back in the 90s where this distrust and this anger has been, was weaponized. You can make a lot of money, and you can make a really great political strategy out of hating journalists, and we made it easy for them. I mean, you can help fill in the blanks on the capitalist, but the capitalist is essentially we cry, we weep, we gnash our teeth. So this is this online news organization. I think it claims like 30,000 readers.
Is it a news organization?
It calls itself a news organization,
And they drop into your email every day.
Yeah, they
if you
do.
allow.
And so they were, I think the nice word is opaque about their financial backing, which was, Joel,
Well, there has been some reporting out of more mainstream media that they reject that the capitalist was getting most of its money from FPL, but they weren't telling the readers that. They were writing about issues having to do with FPL. They were writing about issues that had nothing to do with FPL, but there was nothing on their website or in their newsletter that was transparent about where the money came from, which is a cardinal sin in newspapers and journalism and media.
Yeah, but people don't know that. I think there's so many people who think that, quote, mainstream media, whatever that really is, that we have been run by big business all along. I think, I don't know where I got this quote, but I don't think I'm lying when I read it. And it was, I think this was an email, the plan was to, quote, inject content, quote, into publications without anyone knowing who was pulling the strings. And my position is that since we've done such a bad job with transparency and making it clear where we get our money and what we consider to be journalistic ethics, that when a news site like The Capitalist comes along, why wouldn't people believe them? I think people believe all of us do exactly what they're doing.
And Pat, just for the benefit of our listeners, what is The Capitalist and who's behind it?
Joy, you're going to have to help me with the details here.
It's a news website, but mainly they come to you with an email newsletter that you can sign up for. You opt in. And every day you get an email with their latest stories, and I don't want to speak for them.
Well, who's behind them? You and I do that.
Well,
too.
FPL.
Okay, I don't know that we talked about that yet.
Yeah, the FPL, is, according to the reporting in some of the other mainstream media, there are documents that show FPL basically was paying the salaries of the people working on it, which Joe and I, just to be transparent, are not being paid salaries to be on joecapozzi.com or ongardens.org. We would love to have salaries, so there is that.
Yeah, when I left the paper in 2020, I thought, all right, I did this for 31 years and I'm done, and I took the buyout, and then I quickly learned that there's no off switch in me when it comes to reporting and telling stories. So I started my website, and like you pointed out, I have no underwriters. I do have a PayPal where people send in donations, but I'm just doing this as a labor for love, which I think, Joel, is kind of what you're doing. Why did you get started on Gardens?
My take was a little different. Mine was, there's all this news out there that's not being covered in your local community, and you need hyper-local coverage. You have all sorts of national media. You can turn on the TV and hear all sorts of opinions about stuff. You have national media that you can read, magazines and newspapers, but nobody is telling you what's happening in Palm Beach Gardens, except the Palm Beach Post and a little bit on the TV channels. And I saw a need for more in-depth reporting on the local community, and that's what I've been aiming to do.
Well, I think one of the things you see with local news is this balkanization, as talented people like Joe and Joel have peeled away, right? And they started their own enterprises. But you don't know them. I mean, there's no one, aggregation place where you're going to get a link to Joe's story, or you're going to get a link to Joel's stories. And then there are places like the Coastal Star, which was writing about homeowners insurance a few months ago, right? And then we don't have what is typically called a news desert, like you have maybe in stretches of Mississippi and Alabama. But the Palm Beach Post used to have 300 reporters. Remember that? Do you remember that?
You less than that.
All right. Well, maybe a little bit less. So how many now? I mean, has anyone?
30 or 40.
That can't
30 or
be
40
true.
reporters and editors.
That can't be true.
I
refuse to
in
believe
2008, 110 reporters took buyouts, buyouts, and that left a smaller staff. The Post had 1,300 employees in 2008, and after the buyouts and everything, they quickly got down to about 400, and now they're much smaller than that.
So there are these huge chunks that are not being covered, and I do think that, there's a real question as to whether the Post is ever going to have enough people again to be able to cover things. I mean, we talked about, our in-depth coverage of the heroin epidemic. How many reporters were working on that, Joel?
Like 5.
Yeah, 5. And does the Post really have enough people? And that, I'm going to say, is not the Palm Beach Post fault. That is their parent company's fault,
Exactly.
Gannett, which had to take on, I don't even know how much money.
Over $1 billion
in debt, and now they have to pay it off. And how do you pay it off? Well,
And it's worth
cut
noting.
staff.
It's worth noting they're offering buyouts again this year, this December.
Furloughs.
Furloughs, they're enforced furloughs, but also buyouts. So more of the institutional knowledge is going to walk out the door.
right. And so I don't think the Post would be able to do that kind of project. I don't think they could have done Heroin Project. I don't think, Joe, some of those amazing takeouts you did, including the one that won the National Sigma Delta Chi Award, and others, I just don't see that they have the time for it. Even if the talent is there, I don't see they have the time.
Now corporate will disagree with you. They'll say, "Oh, we're Gannett now," and I think you were part of the teams, right?
Yeah.
That they would drag the regional and try to do. But they didn't really do local Palm Beach County stories. It would be more
Statewide.
Florida, South Florida, statewide, without the focus on Palm Beach County that the Palm Beach Post readers did get 20, 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I would be pulled into stories like I was pulled into the Surfside story, but
With
as
USA Today.
yeah, but that that was the exception, not the rule.
And it wasn't well managed. It was chaotic.
Yeah, it was. It was.
You look like you want to elaborate.
It
Am I right?
was. Yeah. Well, but then the question is, even if the Post had 300 reporters, who would read it, given the current atmosphere, and who would trust it?
So, not to jump ahead or anything, but why do too many people, more than we would like to know? Why do that many people know about a publication like The Capitalist?
I don't know where they get their mailing list. I don't know if it's a blind mailing list. I don't know if FPL turned over names. Maybe it's all FPL people. I don't know. But I got it in.
And
can we do that?
That was
Let's do
Engineer
that.
Will. at the wheel.
Will, can we do that every 5 or 10 minutes?
It's true. That's true. Especially with big money. I don't know where they get. I don't know where they get all the readers, but they get all. We say there are readers. Okay. All we really know is that there are email addresses.
What I found is there's a Safety review. They put out stories, statewide interest. You click on them, and it might be The Capitalist, and the first thing they do is they hit you up with join our newsletter, get these newsletters every day. and you're basically you're not paying anything, but you're going to view the world through the right-wing lens. And it's always interesting because they always have a separate take on what the mainstream media is reporting. Go
Yeah,
for it.
you know, I'm just going to say I could sit here for hours and hours and talk about what the capitalist is doing and how I feel about that. But I'd really rather talk about everything we're doing wrong, you know, because nobody talks about that, you know.
Or what we need to be doing.
What we should be doing. I mean, I think there are efforts now, and I hope they're not too little too late, you know, to inject transparency, you know, into the reporting process.
So Pat came up with sort of a Bill of Rights for you, the reader, and she could give you a couple of examples here.
Well, you know, what would be my favorite one? Well, I think especially if you're watching cable news, you have a right to be informed really clearly about what content is opinion and what content is news. Because, you know, I feel like if you're watching cable news, you're not watching cable news, you're watching cable opinion. You know,
Exactly.
where you have essentially, you know, columnists giving their opinion about news. But I cannot tell you how many people I've spoken with who think they're getting news when really they're listening to, you know, whether it was Rachel Maddow or whether it was Tucker Carlson, they're listening to opinions. And, you know, we know, but maybe, you know,
There's
you
an
know,
echo.
readers don't
There's an
know.
echo chamber where they bring on guests who will echo their message
Right.
and reinforce it, and it's very powerful.
And also, I just want to say, too, that if you're an opinion writer, if you're giving opinion, you're not anchored to the truth. You know, you do not have to necessarily tell the truth. If you steer clear of libel laws, you can say pretty much whatever you want to, and you're safe. And so people think, well, they're saying outrageous things. It must be true. Nobody's calling them on it. Well, no. I mean, they're doing what opinion writers in perpetuity have done. So, you know, I think that's one of my pet peeves. You know, so.
So you are listening to The Reporters, Joe Capozzi and Joel Engelhardt here with Pat Beal talking about the state of the news industry. And at some point we're going to post your Bill of Rights so listeners, when they go onto the website, they can read them for themselves. But first I have to ask, I read through them. You really quoted a dead person, huh? Is that true, or was that a typo?
It's not a typo, you know. Now I think I should really share everybody else's really colorful errors and mistakes. But yeah,
And
we
God knows I've made more than my share in my career.
Joel,
Not
have
you-
we
no,
have we
not
both
Joel.
made more
We
than
all
our
have.
share? We worked for Joel, you know.
All
so,
the time.
Yeah, but I mean, it's so easy to make a mistake in this business. It really is, and yeah, there was that. I wish I could say that was the worst mistake I've ever made, you know, but it probably isn't. But I'm not going to talk about the rest of them either, you
There-
know.
There's something else here you wrote that is more termed toward the obligation of the reporter to the reader and the listener. I just wanted to read that for you. Pat wrote, we have more obligations than rights, but we, and these are the reporters, have the right to obnoxiously demand answers and question authority, not because we like being publicly characterized as horseflies on the rump of society, or much, much worse, not because we like having our family members threatened and our colleagues murdered, but because we serve the reader, and the reader has a right to the truth.
Yeah, they do. You know, I was thinking about, you know, I mean, how many reporters have been murdered since, I think it was 2017? It started in the Annapolis newsroom, you know? I don't.
Well,
was it-
worldwide, there's a lot.
Well, let's just talk about America, because before that, you know, you had Don Bowles in Arizona, who was an investigative reporter. He was looking into, I think it was mob connections
Yes,
or
yeah.
in real estate, and he went to, I guess, meet a source, and it was all set up because there was a car bomb, and when he went outside, he was murdered. But it's such a rarity. I mean, how many times since then have reporters been murdered? And the answer is not very many. And I haven't even looked at all the numbers of reporters, including what's known as citizen journalists, who've been assaulted, you know. But the number was growing the last time I looked at it. And then, of course, you just had, you know, the reporter who was stabbed in his driveway. And somebody said to me, well, you know, the person who stabbed him was a Democrat. But that's not the point. The point is, it is open season on reporters. And I do worry about my colleagues.
Yeah, reporters, and what was the latest headline? Nancy Pelosi's husband.
Someone went into the
broke in and looking for Nancy, and the husband's in the hospital. Anyway, not that we're putting ourselves on the same platform, but
the violence is rising.
And you know, it's so different because I feel like as experienced reporters, as we started doing in-depth work, I mean, we always knew there was risk. You know, we've all been threatened. You know, we've all had people who I felt like might have gone over the line, but we knew how to kind of gauge risk, right? And you weren't risking your life if you went to a polling station on, say, election day. And you know, there shouldn't be risk associated with that. You know, you should not have to be afraid to do that. And I really do worry about the younger reporters because, A, they may not have a background in risk assessment, right? Years and years of experience of risk assessment. And then, you know, and the other thing is I just feel like they're being put in a situation that it could hurt them, where they could get hurt, you know.
Well, how much of this, in my opinion, and maybe I'm missing something, but it's gotten real scary since Trump first ran. That's where I noticed it.
Well, yeah. I think it started in the mid 1990s. You know, I do. I think it's
Newt Gingrich.
With Newt Gingrich. You know, Newt Gingrich and also Rush Limbaugh. Because if you look at Gingrich, I mean, Gingrich knew he could make a political strategy out of discrediting reporters and kind of manipulating this low level of anger. Everybody ticks off at reporters. Everybody gets ticked off at their daily paper, right? And we were so used to being, you know, to being disliked that it was kind of like, what, the frog in the hot water? You know, I mean, it was just, oh, this is Tuesday, right? But then it just got... I feel like it got, and Rush Limbaugh, of course, made commercial hay out of it, right? As Fox News later did. You know, I mean, if you remember when Fox News started, their whole thing was, you know, we're going to tell you the truth. You know, those other people, they're never going to tell you the truth. And so I just think it's grown.
We saw it front and center here in the 2000 election because you'd go to, after 36 days of counting ballots, every day there were both sides lined up on the streets and faced off against one another. And there was anger and there was hostility, but you didn't feel like your life was in danger and it wasn't vicious.
Yeah.
It hadn't gotten to the point of violence like it has through the last 4 or 5 years. And the George Floyd killing was a big factor in that. And there's just been, and the pandemic forcing everybody inside. And so the world is changing. And for media, we are a target, and we've always been a target, but we become more of a target.
And it just concerns me that, like, this Trump's fake news phrase has become so ubiquitous now, and it's like I think there's just a lot of people just latch on to fake news anytime they're angered with something, and I don't know that it's ever going to go away.
Yeah, words are powerful, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, they really are very, very powerful, and how you frame something. But I still feel like if we had been more transparent, you know, if we had talked to people, if we had gotten out and listened to people, you know, and they could ask questions like, why did you use an anonymous source, you know? Where do you get your money? That sort of thing. I think we couldn't have diffused all of it, but I think we couldn't have diffused all of it. Maybe we couldn't have diffused any of it, but I think we had a responsibility to do that.
You have a right to know the policy on anonymous sources.
Yeah.
You have a right to online access to the original source documents. Those hyperlinks in the stories online, if you click them, you should be able to see the fact that the person writing is citing.
Document cloud.
Document cloud, yeah.
If
Yeah.
listeners don't know what that is, when you read, if you're reading a story and you're talking about a lawsuit, usually a responsible news story will have the lawsuit hyperlinked in the text. You click the link and there's the court document. So,
Yeah.
real news.
And a journalistic group came up with a way to do that with PDFs, so they don't have to exist as a URL. You can drop them into something called Document Cloud, and the public can get source access to documents, and it's all public.
What's the name of that group?
It's not Muckrake now owns it, but
Yeah.
they didn't start it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that the other thing on this Bill of Rights I wanted to emphasize was that has to do with conflicts of interest, right? Because I won't get into the gory details, but locally there's a major news organization where they've had 2, maybe 3, what would have been considered scandals, in an earlier time, a not so earlier time, right? And so I think people have a right to reporting where you're not taking expensive gifts. I mean, what was it at the Post? We could have no meals at all, right? Could be provided to us. So you go to lunch and we both have hamburgers, and they say, they say something like, "Oh, I'll get your hamburger and fries," and it was like, "Nope."
The Post insisted on paying, and you don't take theater tickets, you don't do any of that stuff.
Yeah, or worse, much worse.
So what do we do though with this balkanization to cover a local community as large as 1.5 million people in Palm Beach County, when you have, in the 1980s, they literally had 3 daily newspapers fighting for every reader, the Miami Herald, the Sun Sentinel, and the Palm Beach Post, and now the Sentinel has withdrawn almost back into the Broward line. The Herald is long gone, and the Post is a shadow of its former self.
Wasn't there 2 newspapers in West Palm way back? Was it the Post-Times? Was that separate from the Post?
There was the Post and the Times, and they merged and became the Post-Times.
And and then
There was a
shiny sheet on the island.
There's an afternoon paper and a morning paper, and now people can't get their paper delivered. I mean,
it's
the
true.
biggest complaint.
That's another show. That's all.
That's the biggest complaint, and so we're moving away from the print product that is going to be gone in the next 5 to 10 years, and you'll be reading it online anyway.
You'll be reading it on your phone.
So why not read it from us? And
well, yeah. I mean, I don't know if I should make a pitch here, but I can
course
tell
you
you.
should.
Okay, thank you.
This
I
is
have
the internet. You
permission.
can
This is
say
the
anything you
internet.
want,
We've
right, Will?
established we can say anything. Will nods vigorously. He's nodding no, but you can't see that. so we're free, right? Yeah, I mean, I am, and a couple of other individuals are working towards a digital news organization where, among other things, we would be able to aggregate other news organizations and other great work, so that, first of all, nobody ever has to miss a Joe Capozzi story again, and that's along with original in-depth reporting. And look, that's it's a hurdle. It's a big ask to be able to do that.
it's the role newspapers used to play. You'd have so many reporters. You'd have lifestyle, you'd have sports, you'd have news countywide and up into Martin County and worldwide and nationwide, and it was all in one place so you could find it. And now it's just so balkanized, so if you want to find it, you don't know where to look. So we want to try to make it easier for you to find.
So right now, Joel, how do readers find ongardens.org if they want to read about Palm Beach Gardens?
Facebook is my greatest delivery method. Google search. Nextdoor app, I'm not even on Instagram, folks. I don't know a good way to get news out on Instagram, and so I haven't even tackled that. And I have not ticked the talk. We're not there yet.
So yeah, I'm the same way, and that keeps the discussion going. Like right now, we're just relying on social media and word of mouth. And I do have like a sign-up letter. I might have a couple of 100 people that have signed up and get an automatic email, but we want to reach more people, I think there is a what's the word I'm trying to say? There's a need for more hyper-local that just the way that the newspapers did it 20, 30 years ago.
And I definitely think there's an appetite for it, but I just want to say that I don't have good money because I was a reporter and I had that salary for so many years. But if I had good money,
not a high salary.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Listen.
I would pay good money to watch a Joe Capozzi TikTok because I'm thinking
They're free.
Yeah,
You don't pay for the TikTok.
It's free. Well, somebody's got to buy his lunch somewhere.
So, Pat, talk a little more about the venture that you hope to launch, and what are the main challenges that must be hurdled to make it happen?
Oh my gosh! I mean, so many.
Finding
hurdles.
readers and readers finding us. I'm working with Pat on it as well, and so we have set up an email account called stetmediagroup@gmail.com.
Right.
And if you want to get our newsletter, you can send us an email right now, and we'll send you out the first one when it gets ready to come out.
What's it called again, Joel?
Stet Media Group.
Spell it and tell us why that's the name.
Yeah, Joel, you do that. You spell it and tell us.
And why it's
STET, Stet, is an old journalism term for when you're marking up copy with your pen and paper, and you want it to remain the same. You want to tell somebody, oh, that word I scratched out, I don't want to scratch it out. I want to unscratch it out. I want to stet it. And you put stet on there, and that's just an old journalism term.
It's a term for the mark you make when the editor has done something to your copy that's incredibly wrong, and you're saying, I got it right the first time. That's
There you
what
go.
stet means.
There
I
you go.
used to just write curse words down.
Yeah.
That's just me.
Yeah, all of those.
And
So, how do you do it on your own out of your wallet, or are there grants that you're going to seek to do this?
We're going to look for money everywhere, and I think there are multiple potential revenue streams. But I have to say that we have to establish first that people want local news. And that we know we can have strong local news. We know that we can have really valuable links and ties to other news organizations. But, if there's no appetite for it, if news is no longer a marketable commodity, then we need to know that, because then I got other things I can be doing, man.
So you want to ask, where do you get your news? And if they say, well, I get it on social media, I get it on Twitter, I get it on TikTok. You're probably not hearing about the parking fees that the city of West Palm Beach has just inflicted on downtown. So where do you get that? And do you care about it anymore? And if you do care, would you pay for it?
There is this saying that it's our job to make them care. And I think there's some truth to that. I think if we're writing stories and we're not giving people something that is of value to them, if we're not explaining why they should care about these things, then we failed, Even if we win awards for it, we failed.
Yeah, one challenge I've had, and I don't know if you've had this, Joel, when I post stories on Twitter or Facebook, I'll put them on Engage, it's a great Facebook page, Engage West Palm Beach. But a lot of times people will make a comment and it's apparent where they've read the lead-in or the headline and didn't read, well, why are they playing here? And it's like, click the story, read it. And I just think in the age of Twitter, people are so used to reading, what's the character count now, 160 or whatever, that's all they want to read.
Yeah.
When they're not going to get the whole story of why the city is raising the parking rates downtown in a little Twitter thing. You want to click the link, people, read the story.
Yeah. I became an editor in one of the worst periods of journalism in Orange County. I contributed to that greatly, by the way. Yes, I did. Yeah, I did. But when I came there, what I felt like was our short stories need to be shorter, and our long stories need to be longer. You know, I think there's a place for, for a summary of a story, and I think that we also have to give people not just a summary, but a means of going further. And look, every major news organization in the country has realized there's money to be made in in-depth and investigative reporting, which is a very encouraging thing for people like us, I think.
Let me reintroduce ourselves. You're listening to The Reporters on Subculture Radio, and we're here with Joe Capozzi, whose work you can find at buyjoecapozzi.com, 2 Z's in Capozzi. I'm Joel Englehart. You can see my work at ongardens.org. And this is Pat Beal, who has just talked for the first time publicly about an effort to start a news source that will be called Step Media Group, or, we're working on the landing page.
Yeah.
A work in progress.
Yeah.
Just
A work in
like our
progress.
websites.
Yeah.
That sounds great. So what are the next steps, and where are you guys now with in the process of bringing that to a reality, I guess?
Well, we're dealing with the corporate/legal issues that come with any news organization, incorporation, libel insurance,
Seed money.
seed money,
Libel insurance.
Yeah, for me, for sure. I don't.
God, I just launched the website. I'm going to write stories I think are interesting. But this is all important stuff that people don't know that happens in the background.
Yeah, there's only so far I can report a story out before I start getting on shaky ground, whether it's writing about an individual. There's an individual I've been looking at who has some property dealings in Palm Beach County, who has a very sketchy background, may have some Russian links, right? And so I really want to write about this individual, but frankly, I don't feel comfortable doing that unless we have libel insurance, because anybody with a beef and a crazy lawyer and a filing fee can, go into court.
Does he live at Mar-a-Lago?
No, he does not live at
Thank
Mar-a-Lago. No.
He used to.
No. Actually, I will tell you, though, don't you think South Florida has an awful lot of Russians? I mean, a lot of Russians.
And not that we're saying there's anything wrong with that.
That's right. That's right.
I love hockey.
It's just, and I don't mean Sunny Isles. I don't mean Little Moscow. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they like the sunshine as much as we do.
It is cold there, I've heard. I've never been.
I hear that too. So.
Well, Joe has written about a young woman from Kiev who's here, or maybe she's not here anymore.
Oh, the Ukrainian woman and her daughter who
Fled
as the bombs were falling in the initial invasion, and they're friends with a gentleman that lives in South Palm Beach, or the south end of Palm Beach, just north of South Palm Beach. And they're longtime friends, and this guy bought the woman and her teenage daughter airline tickets, and they were literally shoved into train cars to get to the airport. To get to Warsaw was an arduous journey. And anyway, they're here.
Wow.
And if you go to my website, you can see the story. But I haven't checked in with them in a couple of months. But I remember when I spoke to them, they didn't want to do an interview. They were shell-shocked, and they were online, always looking for the latest things that are happening. And her one comment to me, when she finally agreed, she was like, "Look, we're not here on vacation. We're just trying to survive."
Yeah. What a compelling story.
But anyway,
and who knew at the time that it would still be going on? I mean, she got out fairly shortly after it started.
yeah, and her husband and her sons are still there, fighting the good fight.
Yeah.
But she's not alone. I think there's a lot of Ukrainians that have fled to all parts of the United States, including South Florida. But that's another example of an international story that's happening right in our backyards. And
Yeah. Do you remember how I used to say in the newsroom that every weird thing, no matter how national, eventually had a link to Palm Beach County? everything.
Well, Florida's like the country's drain. It all flows, right?
We've all heard of Florida Man.
Florida.
Yeah, that's right. So what are you writing about, Joel?
It's a secret.
No, not really. No, I try to cover, little bits and pieces of Palm Beach Gardens. Yesterday night, there was a meeting, the Department of Transportation, talking about how cars get onto I-95 at PGA Boulevard. And they're starting a $10 million project on November 9th that's going to take over a year. And for the first time, they basically said it's not going to help the backups of cars on PGA Boulevard that you see every day from the Palm Beach Mall, the Gardens Mall, to the highway, because this project just isn't really designed for that. But we're still going to spend $10 million, and we're not going to help the problem.
That's great.
So
what are they doing? Where's the money? Are they buying gold-plated railings for the highway?
They're doing a project to make it easier. Once you hit the highway to merge, there'll be a new merge lane for the people coming in on the right. It's a little complicated. And they've always said that was the project, but initially they said that might or should help the backups. Last night, they had all the engineers there saying, we never studied the backups. We are not going to help the backups. If it does, that's a nice turnout of events, but, we'll see in a couple of years when it's done.
That's such a great example of the importance of local news. I mean, how your taxpayer money is being spent. Who knew? Who knew?
And that's the tip of the iceberg. I mean, there's zillions of examples that are not being written about where government waste, local government waste especially.
Yeah.
There's 39 cities in Palm Beach County, and the Palm Beach Post and the TV channels can't possibly cover them all. It's just too much.
I remember when I came to the Post in the late 80s, every small community had its own reporter. We had one or two Glades reporters. Remember Dean Jones? And
yeah, we had a bureau.
They were everywhere. The Miami Herald had a bureau in Fort Pierce. It was just another time now, and there's fewer reporters means that, what's the old saying? When the cat's away, the mice come out and play. That's a bad cliche, but the spotlight needs to be put on the people in charge of money.
Yeah, that's the question I guess I'm asking is if you don't read newspapers, do you care how your tax dollars are spent? And you say, well, I rent, I don't pay taxes. Well, when you go to the store and you buy something, you're paying a 6% sales tax. And when you go to the gas station to gas up, you're paying a tax for gas. And your landlord at the place you're renting from is paying a property tax. And it's all going to the government. And nobody's really watching how they're spending it.
Yeah. And that has to change. And that's why you're doing what you're doing. I'm doing what I'm doing. But we're I guess we're on the internet. I can say we're peeing into the fire and the blaze is going.
Oh, I'm much more optimistic than that. Maybe it's because I watch more TikTok than you guys do.
So Steph Media will aggregate, and will it have a staff where you'll do your own original reporting too, or?
Well, yeah, we'll do original reporting, and I've got some stories, lined up and ready to go, and we think they're compelling, and hopefully we'll also address some of these topics that are not being covered, like business, and the example I give is the real estate crisis, the residential real estate crisis, did not occur overnight. That was years in the making. The fact that I am going to have to sell my 4 cats to pay for my property, my property insurance, that did not happen overnight. That was years in the making. And so these are stories that really need to be told. And sometimes they can be hard stories to tell because they might be incremental. But at least you don't wake up one day and, cold water in your face because all kinds of things are going to Hades in a handbasket.
Yeah, and the stories that you want to tell can't be told in a tweet.
No, not even a thread. But but I think there is a way to do a thread so we can bring people into the story, And if they don't want to read it, they don't want to read it. I don't expect everything I write to be everyone's cup of tea, Should be, but No.
It's my cup of tea.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And I don't want
appreciate
the listeners out there to think that every episode of The Reporters is going to be about the news media. We're just trying to warm up a little bit. And we'd really love to know what you'd like to hear about. We want to do issues. We want to bring in guests who can speak clearly about an issue and perhaps take someone else who can take an opposing side. So we're very interested, and if we had an email address, we'd ask you to email us.
But for now, you could go to our websites, and you have contact information,
Sure.
right, on ongardens.org
Absolutely.
and byjoecapozzi.com. There's a link there too to reach out to me. But yeah, I mean, listeners, this show's about you. If you give us ideas, we want to do stories that you care about too.
Next week, we plan to talk about the housing bond that's on the November 8 ballot. So if you haven't voted yet, hold off a little longer. The county is asking the voters to give it $200 million to spend to supplement affordable housing and to make it happen more. And we're going to have someone in who's an expert on that issue to talk about it and give you some background so you can decide how you want to vote.
Are we allowed to share who that expert is yet?
I don't want to disappoint, but we have a commitment from Palm Beach County Commissioner Mac Bernard, who was instrumental in getting the measure to move forward to the ballot. And, if you have some questions or doubts about it, please find us and write us, and we'll be happy to ask him.
I know how to confirm his appearance. Free beer. I mean, we're on Clematis. It's 5 o'clock at Friday. And frankly, I'm very disappointed in both of you because I'm sitting here with water.
Will, we thought these were going to have beer in them.
Supposed to bring it?
We are so disorganized, Pat. What can I say?
It's our inaugural show. This is our inaugural show, and it's going to be a work in progress. But we want your ideas for sure. And I like the topic of our first show because it's just explains why we're here doing what we're doing. We both three people that are no longer employed full time by the major media, so the Palm Beach Post. And we're still carrying the torch. We still want to do it. We still want to bring news. We think it has value to the community. And we're trying to find that sweet spot where it works. And we can pay our mortgages and car payments while we do this. And yeah, I have not been doing that for the last year, but I still like what I'm doing.
You should know that, working for a newspaper is not a high-paying job, and more they're bringing in younger reporters and asking them to work for less than a prevailing wage where they can afford a place to live. And Gannett is the largest newspaper chain in America with over 200 newspapers nationwide, and they just announced that all of their, maybe not all, but most of their reporters and editors are going to be required to take a week off without pay right before Christmas. So it's not, you can be critical of your local media, but they're not well paid and they're working really hard.
Yeah, and what I'm doing, and maybe Joel, you agree too with the reason you're doing it, is I'm not competing with the Post. I almost feel like I'm filling a void that they just can't get to. I mean, the people that are there, I'm friends with a lot of them still, and they're dedicated. And if you're hearing frustration in our voices during the show, I'm sure they share that frustration too, and they're keeping the good fight up, and they're doing it just under this constant shadow of, is my shoulder going to get tapped today? Am I going to get laid off today? At least I felt that way the last 5 years at the paper. So yeah, they're doing hard work in very, very tough conditions. And I see on social media people love to go on and make fun of a typo in a Palm Beach Post headline or something like that. And that, that's not necessarily their fault. This bare bones staff, they're doing what they can, and if the corporate owners really cared about journalism, they would put the resources in to make it function the way it should. Is there a Jeff Bezos here that'll help fund the Post or not?
There's a whole island.
we'll hook you up, folks.
Yeah, right.
That's ongardens.org and buy joecapozzi.com.
And so what should readers do to watch for the next incarnation of Stet Media?
Invite me back.
Just
Just
occasionally
before we
Google
launch.
that, and maybe it'll appear one day.
No, we'll
It'll be up
make
and
sure
running.
that
It'll be
Yeah.
an email product. So
Yeah.
we're hoping to hit your email box, and you'll accept and opt in. We basically need people to opt in to get enough followers to make it worth our while, and then eventually we hope that people will pay for it. Just like you would. I was thinking the other day, I talked to somebody, I'm sorry, who subscribes to the Palm Beach Post, and they charge $60 a month for a print product to be delivered to their door.
$60, like daily,
He's
I
paying
guess,
$60
right?
a month daily. And I said, you could get a online subscription to the Palm Beach Post for about $15, maybe even $9.99. There are certain deals out there. And you could also get the Sun Sentinel and the Miami Herald and the New York Times to boot and still not be hitting $60 a month. So think about maybe subscribing to Stet or By Joe or On Gardens, and we'll also try to convert your money into good coverage.
And maybe you could hit the donation button too, so
yeah.
we can buy ourselves a beer after we write a story.
Or after a 5 o'clock Friday subculture radio show. We're here on Clematis Street on Friday, October 28th.
Game 1 of the World Series tonight. Pat, when did you do the Bill of Rights, the Reader's Bill of Rights? And was there a spark that, I'm going to sit down and write this Bill of Rights? What prompted you to do it, and when did you do it?
All of the exposés about the column, about the capitalist, and yeah, but it's been building for a while, because I hear from people, and then you see ethical slips, and then you see people who might find mistakes and who use those to show that all reporters are this and this and this. But it's been a long time irritation to me that we haven't provided readers with information about us. They don't think we're human. Seriously, they just don't think we're human. And I can't blame the readers for that. What other industry is there where people stop buying their product, where the industry blames the people? I feel like, okay, if nobody was buying coffee at Subculture, would they be criticizing coffee drinkers? No, they'd be looking at their product. They'd be talking, to their clientele. They'd be trying to do different things, and they'd be trying to do it quickly. And I feel there's just a lot of room and improvement on our part. And I'm tired of hearing, well, it's the internet's fault, or young people don't read. That's on us. That's on us. It's our job to make them care again. Yeah.
I want to bring up another point, but Will, how are we doing on time?
You got about 10 minutes.
All right. The one thing that pissed me off, like I saw what the capitalist was doing, and I was like, that's BS,
Yeah.
But I think it was the capitalist that did the story attacking Lulu Ramadan in the Post when they did the expose on the glades and the smoke. But what set me over was, Lulu, she was nominated. She was a finalist for the Pulitzer for that story.
Right.
She didn't win, and their headline was, the Post comes up short.
They've
Well,
lost.
and he had no clue that being a finalist is like just almost as good as winning. It's an Olympic medalist, like a silver medal's pretty good, but this guy was, they blew it. That's because their story was wrong. And
the other thing they got really wrong about Lulu's incredible work was the funding. And part of this Bill of Rights is like you have a right to know where the money's coming from. And sometimes that's very obvious. You look at advertising, like the Post has subscriptions, that sort of thing, right? Well, Lulu got a grant an organization called ProPublica. And what they were saying was, well, she already had the story when she applied for the grant. The fact is, when you apply for a journalism grant, you have to at least give them the bare bones of what you are going to be working on. And I think all investigative stories change. But Joel, you were working with Lulu at the beginning, and didn't some things change between?
A
Yeah.
lot changed, and she did a lot of research and said, here's the idea. We know that they're banning burning in Brazil. They haven't done that here, and then you follow your nose. But what burned me on that was the credibility
No
issue.
pun intended, Bert.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah, oh, yeah.
Smoke rising. It was the credibility issue that you have a group that doesn't say where their money is from,
Yes.
attacking a series of stories that was opposed by an industry that, as far as you know, could very well be helping to fund the organization that's issuing the attacks. It came out that FPL was funding. It never came out that a sugar company was funding, but we won't know that because those documents didn't come forward.
Plus, ProPublica is a respected, well-respected organization that has partnered with dozens and dozens of news organizations on great stories.
Yeah, they have. That's their criteria.
Yeah, anyway, I almost feel like we're giving the capitalists more
More ink than
they deserve. But
let me-
it's
yeah.
emblematic of what's wrong today.
Well, and then there's a question for us: how far should transparency go? How much do you want readers to know about you, right? I mean, are you willing to tell them, the name of your dog or
Lucy,
Lucy? I thought you had 2 dogs.
Ginger,
Thank you. See, you weren't going to go the whole route.
hands off, stay away from
I'm not going there.
Yeah, but I mean, what do we owe the readers about who we are? Because typically, it was like, you don't know anything about me. I'm a cipher in the world, and that's the way it is, and go away.
But how much do they need to know about us?
Good question. What do you think?
Well, should we tell them our home address? Because
No.
No.
look at Nancy Pelosi.
No.
Her home address was out there.
But is it okay to tell them that we're like in Palm Beach County? I mean, I can't say beautiful downtown Cloud Lake because there are only 170 people who live there, right? Process of elimination.
That's right, they'll find
and
you.
I just did, right?
Yeah,
But, yeah.
You can Google us and probably find all that.
Yeah. And what about being on, I mean, people already believe they know how we vote, People already believe what our political party is. And there was actually a Palm Beach Post reporter who refused to vote, Not only refused to,
Register as a
party. Refused to vote, and he's not the only person I know who did that, because of the allegation. But yeah, I think it's valid, to ask how much we should be telling.
And it seems like that is a big part of social media now, where the reporters they'll personalize their page to a degree to engage more with the reader. And I'm kind of old school where that's like weird for me, but maybe I need to dip in and do that more to attract more readers.
It's just part of the job, though, that you're going to have enemies. You're writing about people. You're writing things they don't want known, and they're not going to like it. And you've got to almost accept the fact that you're going to be a little bit outside the mainstream because of what you do for a living. And if you're not, then you're probably not. You're not pissing off the right people.
Yeah, I just would love to find, and I think with the quote Bill of Rights, what I'm trying to say here is I want to get past the knee-jerk hatred, because this hatred is getting in the way of sharing facts, right? I mean, we're reporters. Being disliked is part of the job. It's always been part of the job, but
we want to tell you stuff that you can't get anywhere else.
And that you'll believe.
Yeah. That we're credible. Credibility is the watchword of it all, and that's why this whole conversation started with hypocrisy and not credibility.
Yeah.
And well, it certainly doesn't help our cause when at a presidential rally he's standing behind a podium with thousands of screaming people pointing towards the press pin. There they are, the fake news.
You saw that documentary too?
It's like, what the?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great documentary about the New York Times, and so you have the rally, right? You got the rally, and and you have the press pin at the back with all the reporters, and he starts in on reporters, and it's getting more and more heated, and you can see the reporters one by one closing their laptop and walking away very quietly, except finally there was like one New York Times reporter still there, and everybody turned around, and started screaming at him. So, yeah, that's probably a risk that you probably didn't think you were going to be taking, say, maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago, or you don't feel like you should do a risk assessment just to go to a rally,
Well, thank you for listening. Thank you for being with us for the inaugural episode of The Reporters. I'm Joe Capozzi,
And I'm Joel Engelhardt.
and our special guest.
Hi, I'm Pat Beal. Bye, I'm Pat Beal. Sorry.
We want to thank Pat very much for being here and subjecting herself to this.
And thank you, Will, for sticking by us and guiding us through the technical gauntlet. It is a gauntlet, isn't it?
I did my best.
Yay,
And
Will.
please come back a week from today, 5 o'clock, and we'll have another episode of The Reporters.